Karen and I started the VSAT program several years ago after, as you heard, from separating from the Marine Corps. Because we were fortunate enough, when I was in the military, we had a tiny mouse house in Venice Beach, California, West LA. We bought at the right time, we sold at the right time. We were able to acquire a couple acres in North County, San Diego, which is very much like Tuscany. And we built this business, Archie's Acres, but we wanted to do more. We knew there's a huge talent pool from the military. While I was in the military, I spent half of my time trying to be a more efficient warfighter, and the other half of my time trying to be a more efficient leader. I can still remember all the Marine Corps leadership traits and so on. So there's a huge leadership talent pool that we have in the military, but the success of military people post their career in the military is not what I believe it should be. 300,000 homeless vets. I think the national ranking for unemployment veterans is somewhere around 11%, but I think if we talk to vets, they'll say it's 20 plus, maybe 30 plus percent unemployment rate. So we've been engaged for war the last 10 years, and now these guys are coming home after serving the country, and the economy sucks, as we all know. There's not jobs available that we're always trying to deal with. So our idea was, instead of looking for work, why not we help these guys do what we did and create work and jump into entrepreneurship? And so that's kind of what gave birth to the VSAT program. We worked with the Department of Veteran Affairs for a couple years, which is more or less a nightmare. But this year we transitioned. We're actually able to work with the military community while they're on active duty before they're starting to separate, because the service chief's starting to realize that why would somebody enlist in the Marine Corps, the Army, or the Navy if the statistics are that you have a good chance of being homeless or jobless when you leave the services? So they're starting to be more proactive in trying to get these guys the training they need prior to separation, so they'd be more successful as civilians. So we gave birth to the VSAT program, or Veteran Sustainable Agriculture Training Program, and there's huge opportunities now in the agricultural community, probably more than ever. And let me try to go through some of these PowerPoints and express those. So that's us, and that's our business, Archie's Acres, and the Veteran Sustainable Agriculture Training Program. And this is a map of, as it says, world instability. And this map's a little outdated. If you look in Africa right now, particularly in North countries, Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, we all know the instability and the unrest in those regions today. But the reason why I'm showing you this map is, one, obviously coming from the defense community, these type of maps are something we're looking at all the time. But what we see here is world hunger maps. So if you look at the places that are hungry, and if you look at the places that are unstable and have high rates of violence, you notice that they're almost equal. And again, this map's a little bit outdated as well. Those countries, Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, and so on, should also be highlighted as a hunger area. In fact, I think it was the Washington Post published an article, and it said 100% the reason for the revolution in Egypt and so on is because of the 10% hike in food prices in those areas. A lot of that right now is because of speculation from commodity traders of what the cost of food is going to be in the future, and that drives up the cost of food today. And that's what happened in Egypt when a guy was trying to sell crops in his little farm stand. A government official came up looking for a bribe, and the guy didn't have any money. The government official basically tossed all his product on the floor and so on. And next day, he went down to the Capitol or the government building, wherever the case may be, set himself on fire, and shortly after, the revolution that we all know took place in that area. So, and as we also know, there's going to be a huge spike in food prices going forward, not only because unavailability of natural resources such as water, which we're dealing with in the Southwest, which this map shows. And again, this is another outdated map, but you see the red areas of places without water. If you don't have water, you can't grow crops. In the United States, we're facing similar issues, primarily because the Southwest, where it says little or no water insecurity, that's actually very untrue. In San Diego, we pay about $1,400 per acre foot of water. That's the most expensive water in the country. An acre foot is if you covered an acre of land with a foot of water. That's how we measure water in agriculture. So in Northern California, for example, you can find an acre foot of water for about $5. But in Southern California, it's much more expensive, primarily because, let me go back to that, primarily because we move water in Southern California like nobody else does in the world. We pump it from the Colorado River and from the Delta in Northern California into Southern California because it's a desert down there. We don't think about it that way because we have beaches and whatnot, but it's a dry desert and very little precipitation. And going back to the instability, if you look at regions in our own country, like this area right here, Inglewood, we have a Navy vet here working on this very issue because he's from Inglewood. If you look inside the city limits of Inglewood, you won't find any good food. And we've highlighted some of the Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. You can see the flags showing where those areas are. You can see the more affluent communities, not in the poorer communities. And as a crop producer myself, we're going high-end organic products. I'm not taking my products to those areas either because if people can't afford them, they're not going to buy them. So our philosophy is, well, what if we change that? What if we bring the crop production aspect to them using veterans and their skills in counterinsurgency and their ability to take on huge challenges and try to rebuild some of these communities. This is a map, the same town, Inglewood, and it shows the accessibility to alcohol and fast food within the city limits. So you see there's huge access to poor food and no access to good food. Again, we're not going to be able to change that because the money isn't in that community, but we can bring the crop production aspect to those communities through technology utilizing hydroponics and soilless production, and I think kind of transform the communities by giving them better access. Let's see what else we got here. So this is what we talk about when we talk about hydroponics. You see that bottom picture on the bottom right there. That's what we call nutrient film techniques. So we take the crop out of the soil and we use soilless medias and we grow directly in the water. And what that allows us to do is be about 90% more water efficient and input efficient. So we can take these systems virtually anywhere in the world and establish these. And that's what we're working on right now with the predominantly the Department of the Navy, is basically containerize these systems. See, the Navy goes on floats all the time, for instance, and they have the CBs. If you know what CBs are, they're basically contract crew during hostile environments. But a lot of times they'll stop off in the Horn of Africa to do some training and refit a school and rebuild a school or something like that. Our philosophy is, and if you know how hard it is to learn when you're hungry, it's pretty difficult. So our philosophy is, if you're there already establishing a school, take some of our veterans with you, leave them behind, and within 3 weeks, using these type of systems, we can be feeding these people. And as you know, in those regions, agricultural products is the currency. They trade agricultural products. If you have ag products, you have a currency. And that's actually true here in the United States. Most people don't realize the food and fiber industry within the United States is a $1.3 trillion industry. Now, that's nearly 10% of our total GDP. You take that away from our GDP, and that's a huge loss. And the other market opportunity here is 2/3 of the crop producers are leaving the industry. They're reaching retirement age, and nobody's filling those shoes. So, again, we use what we call the Xbox agricultural systems and the talent pool of the veteran community and try to make entrepreneurs out of them. So that's our main focus with the VSAP program. Just some more pictures. So the last picture, this is in a, can't get it to go backwards. Here we go. So this is in a controlled environment or a greenhouse. Very efficient. Again, we can do 17 crop turns a year out of these greenhouses using 90% less water, very little labor, and so on. And that's compared to about 7 crop turns in traditional field-grown crops, if you're lucky. This is a lower speed system, just under some shade cloth. Crops only need about 40 to 60% of light provided by the sun. So you take some of the light away, de-stress the plants, and get better production that way. I guess that was it for. I'm moving too fast here. I guess that was it for our slides. But so the main focus is of really the VSAP program is to try to tap into the talent pool of the veteran community, use this hub of agriculture that gives us, again, a mission statement, because it's very demotivating to leave from an institution like the Marine Corps, where you had intent, you had focus, you knew where to be every day, to going back to the private sector, where you're looking for a job in an economy that doesn't offer very many, and it's more about just paying the bills instead of being a driving force to be reckoned with. And we just think there's a huge talent pool that we could tap into. And if you look at it purely, take the humanities side out, look at it purely as a matter of economics, we spend about $1 million in everybody we deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan. And that's only about 0.5% of Americans. So very small portion of people. We spend about $1 million on each of them. But when they come back and they have the failure rates that we do, that's kind of a poor investment in my mind. Yeah, we defended ourselves, but we should be spending a little bit more money to ensure that upfront investment is carried out through the life of these individuals, and we can get that money back by creating productive tax-paying citizens. So that's our main focus. And I know Karen wants to say a few words about what it means to be a family in an agricultural community.
Hi, I'm Karen Archipley, and thank you for having us here. And our program was created because when Colin returned from Iraq on his third time, he actually considered going back to Iraq as a way to continue to serve. And that was because a lot of the people he served with, men and women, were returning, not because they wanted to re-enlist, but because they couldn't feed their families. And we didn't think that was fair. And so we created this program so we could offer a way to transition out of the military. And it was really, from selfish means, turned out to serve the many. So now, as people transition out of the military, we're able to connect them back with their wives and their families through sustainable organic agriculture. Because when you actually start a program, like if you went into your own crop production, it is a family-run business. So there's no getting around it. And when your husband's been away, like Colin served 3 tours in Iraq. So out of 4 years, he was in Iraq 3 different times for 7 months. When he was home, he was spending his time getting ready for that next deployment. So to actually have him come back and then start our farm together kind of gave us an opportunity to reconnect. And it was through our making a good living. And so that's what we share today with families transitioning out of the military. And it's a perfect fit for combat veterans. It's a perfect fit for anybody, really, because sustainable organic agriculture, Colin usually says, that Thomas Jefferson saw America as a quilt, and on that quilt, every square was a family-run farm. And so who better than our military transitioning out of the military than to run those farms? And so that's really what we're about. Thank you.
And just to add, I talked about why we do this, but what we do is we offer a 6-week program to active duty veterans and civilians as well, but our main focus is military people. And it's an entrepreneur-based program. We spend about 50% of the time talking about crop production. The other 50% of the time we're talking about business ownership, profit and loss, cash flow projection, those type of things. So when they leave, and we also work with companies like Whole Foods, Disabled Veterans Assistance Foundation, and so on. So when they leave, they actually have access to capital to help them start their own business. And that's what we do, and thank you for listening to us.
Yeah.
Thanks again. Thank you.